Okay, we are live on YouTube. All right, I'm going to make this quiet. We are here, and I'm going to look at you on Zoom though, because otherwise gets really confusing. But this was fast though. Oh, Deidre is here. Hi. Can you tell us if you can hear us, Deidre? I hope we are heard and everything is okay. There's a little delay on YouTube always, so whatever we're saying here on Zoom, when I look at the YouTube, it's kind of a little bit mindfuck. Sorry. But I hope people can hear us. So we have decided to come on live. We didn't plan it, but Jory and myself, we're feeling brave enough to, share what we have to say live on YouTube without editing. Thanks, Deidre. Okay, we are heard. People can hear us, so that's good. Hopefully, some people will join in. This is fairly impromptu because, as I said, we didn't know if we're going to pre-record or go live, depending on the vibe. But we have good vibe going on with Jory, so we thought yep, let's do it live. All right. So for anybody who is joining in or rewatching later, today on Inspired Tarot Map, I have Jory Morgan. Hi, Jory.
Hello.
I introduce you just shortly from, I wrote some stuff down from your website, from the introduction to the guidebook, from the guidebook. So Jory is an artist, and we are going to be talking about her amazing deck, which is the Magical Nature Tarot. And in the introduction, Jory says that this deck was actually created. I actually want to open, sorry. This is not going to happen like this because I didn't write it all down, but I want to read it. This is really good. So what's written on the website is Magical Nature Tarot can be a tool to help us strengthen our instincts and reconnect with our own magical natures. But what was really interesting for me was that, Jory, you created the artwork. Rebecca Guanzon
Yep.
wrote the guidebook, which is in virtual form. And the deck was co-published by Wild Soul River and by yourself. And you write that you created this deck, so the art for the cards,
Yeah.
with guidance from the natural world, inspiration from centuries-old tarot traditions, and assistance from your guides. And you call them Sync Spirit Collective, which we actually can see here on the box as well. You write. And I got curious, going what do you mean Spirit Collective? Who are your guides? Can you tell us a little bit more about that
I
bit?
definitely can. And the reason why I wasn't sure if I was going to go public about that, but when I created the deck and had to actually put text onto the box about who this was by, I first wrote by Jory Morgan, and then I realized that that wasn't actually true. It wasn't only me that had made this deck, that I definitely had I had spiritual guidance on it. So for the first time, I decided to be more public about that. And I made up this little acronym, the Sync Spirit Collective. So in addition to being an artist, I am also a channel, and I channel different guides. And two of those guides, there are two main guides who I work with, and two of them, their names or what they want me to call them are in that sync. So the S stands for Shira. The little I is me, as in I, and the N is for Nunca, who's my creative guide, and K is for Ken, who is my personal guide. So for people who aren't familiar with that, and how it comes into play with this project. So what that means is that I am getting assistance and energy from non-human entities that help to transform my creative abilities into something clear and to something that I probably wouldn't be able to do on my own. And in terms of this deck, just to say, before I made this deck, I had zero experience with tarot, none. I had never had a tarot reading. I had never, I didn't own a tarot deck. I knew nothing about tarot, zero. And I was working in an artist residency. And I woke up one morning with a very clear voice, which was from a guide that said, you should make a tarot deck. And I thought, well, okay, why not? I'll make a tarot deck. But I literally knew nothing. And I started working on the deck that day. And what that meant for me, it was a bit of a ritualistic process. I would work on it every single day. Um, I would start the day like visualizing images, doing a little research on the cards, and also doing some channeling to get what the intention of each card was, how it could be helpful. And I did and then I would work into the artwork and I worked on each card until it felt like it was settled. And if it didn't, other artists might explain that, but that's when a piece just doesn't ask for anything more. It's like, okay, I see a lot of art on your wall. So Kasha,
Yeah,
you maybe know what I mean.
it's
When a
done.
piece
Yeah.
settles, it's done. It's like, okay, I'm ready. And I made that. So I went through this process every day, very religiously with great discipline. And I finished the whole deck in 4.5 months. So it
So
was
one question here.
yeah,
Did you go like intuitively about each card, or did you follow the tarot structure from the beginning? Like, you started with the full magician, high priestess, and so on? Or did you have some form of like limits on?
I did. I did give myself some structure because one of the things I love about tarot or have learned to love about tarot is the structure. I find it beautiful. I really love the major arcana, the minor arcana, the suits, the numbers, all of it. Very beautiful. And I feel like structure helps contain these things that are so huge and unwieldy. So we can have these beautiful, intimate conversations and guidance inside of a structure that we can kind of learn about and feel safe in. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
And I used as inspiration also a really wonderful website that's called Little Red Tarot. It's out of the UK.
Yeah,
Um, I
Beth's.
love this person's work. Yeah, they're great. And so I felt like their information about tarot really resonated with some of my own personal beliefs and politics and things like that. So I used their order, which is a non-traditional order, which I learned. Um, and I went through the major arcana first, card by card in order. And then I started, I think I started with pentacles. I did pentacles, went all the way through pentacles. Then I did cups, then I did wands, and then I ended with swords, which is a very intense way to end a 4.5 month journey of a card every day. So
That was fast actually for the whole deck, right? 4.5 months,
it's
78 cards.
insanely fast. Most tarot artists, tarot deck artists spend, I would say on average, like about 2 years, somewhere between 1 and 2 years. So
Yeah,
four and a
yeah,
half months is, especially with no background in tarot, is nuts. Um, but I knew the energy was there and the guidance was there. So I felt like I had to tap into it while it was active.
yeah,
And then once I was done, I was like, I definitely slowed down during the swords because I find the swords to be very intense. Um, and then I just like took a big pause. And I really wasn't doing this project to share with other people. I was just doing it as a channeled art project.
yeah. Okay,
And
wait, because I have now questions.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. Ask as
so,
many as you can.
like, okay, I have a couple of questions because first let's maybe come back to these guides just quickly because
Yeah.
I recently keep interviewing people who turn out to be channels and channeling guides. And like it's interesting, my friend Baltazar, I was interviewing him about his Divine Gypsy Mother deck, which he created as well. And he also had that kind of channeling experience. And with you, like, how did it start? Like, was it like knock, knock, knock? Hello, Jory. We here. Can you hear us?
The start was actually through artwork. And I will say about channelers in general, I feel like more and more channelers are kind of coming out into the open. I think we're at a time in the world where we need that. And people have been very underground with it for, thousands of years, mostly for safety. And people are starting to be more honest about where they're getting inspiration,
Yeah.
where they're
With
getting
the
help.
like evolution of technology and everything, and how our consciousness is kind of wrapped up with it as well. I think it's not like It's just more believable in a sense. Like a lot of people, many more people are kind of going like, oh, maybe it's possible. So it doesn't seem so out like crazy, like what's wrong with you?
I agree. And I think the more people start talking about it openly, the less weird it will feel to other people.
Yeah,
And anyway, so that's a whole nother, that's a whole nother.
exactly. So how did it start with
So
your
how
diet?
it started with me um was I went through, oh, okay, I'll try to make it brief. So I had a friend who is in deep crisis, and I was worried actually that she might hurt herself, physically harm herself, or even commit suicide. And we were not in the same physical place, so I couldn't help her directly. And I wanted to be able to help her so badly, and I unconsciously like sent a call out to the universe. I was trying to do remote Reiki. I was trying to do anything I could, and I just felt like the tools were wrong. So I just sent a big call out and was like, I need different tools. I need new tools. And like I said, it was just in my head. I didn't write it out, but it was a definite call for help. Um, and the next day, starting the next day for many, many months, my dream life started going bonkers. Like I just started having incredible, incredible, incredible dreams night after night after night. So intense that I realized at times I was having other people's dreams. Like I remember this one dream I had that was full of all of these mathematical equations, and there were specific words, and I am not a mathematician. There were specific words that came in that I remembered when I woke up. And I looked up some of these things, and indeed, like I was somehow working on this theorem that a lot of mathematicians are working on right now. I didn't understand the terminology. I didn't understand the math, but it was like in my head. So
Yes.
I was having these kind of very raw channeling experiences that I didn't know what to do
That would
with.
be a nightmare for me having a
It was really
mathematical dream.
weird and a little scary. And then it crept into my artwork. So I started a new series of paintings, and I wanted them to be abstractions. And the first one I just started working with little palette knives, and suddenly there was a landscape that looked really clear. And I was like, what is this? And I showed it to some other people, and they're like, oh, that's really beautiful. And I was like, okay. So I just put it aside. Next painting I started, the same landscape came out. And this just kept happening over and over and over again until it got more and more specific. It was always a horizon line of water with two bottom land masses, one kind of more of a cliff and the other more sloped. And over and over and over again, this kept happening as I painted. So I finally just yielded to it and said, oh, people were loving these paintings too. I had no idea. I kept selling them. There was a lot of interest and activity around them. And after I'd say about 10 months, I had painted maybe 30 or so of these paintings. And I had a dream, and I was up high in the sky, very high in the air, and looking down on a coastline. And in the dream, I asked, what is this? And this voice said to me, this is what you've been painting. And I was like, oh, okay. And so somehow I had the clarity to also ask, where is this? And the voice said, the Amalfi Coast, which I had never heard of. I didn't
Yeah.
know this part. Now I do. I've even
Where
been there.
is it? I don't know it.
It's in Italy. It's in
Oh,
Italy. Yeah, it's close to Naples, and like by train and ferry, I would say it's about like 3 to 4 hours away from Rome. It's south of Rome.
okay. So very specific and like,
Really, really specific. And so I was like, okay. And I woke up and asked my partner, have you ever heard of the Amalfi Coast? And they said, yeah, I think that's in Italy. And I was like, okay. So I looked it up, and sure enough, there's this very specific region. And then I was telling the story to another friend, and she said, you have to figure out exactly where it is. Like, do a Google search, like, get your paintings out and do an image search. And I did, and I found that scene. I found that landscape. And then I
oh,
found out exactly where it is. So it's actually from the viewpoint, the landscape is as if you're on the water moving between the island of Capri and Sorrento. So Capri on the right and Sorrento on the left, very specifically. And I was just like,
So
yeah.
what did you think then? Like I would be going like, what does it mean? Like, do you
What
want
does
to
I
go
know,
there?
what does it mean? And I haven't actually, I haven't really found out what it means, but I did through that process, that voice kept talking to me. And that voice became known to me as my personal guide. And I was able to start having more, it like opened the conversation much more
Wow,
specifically.
that's
And I did go
awesome.
there and it was beautiful. And in a way, it really felt like home. It felt, I was just so happy and peaceful when I was there. So maybe it was a past life thing. I don't even know, but it just felt like something was very balanced in me.
Yeah. And you don't have any ancestry from like Italy? No.
Oh,
Not
almost all my
as,
ancestry is from Germany. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, so interesting. I
I
love
know.
when those synchronicities happen because that kind of makes you like it validates what you
Yes.
could say. Maybe I'm imagining, the
Yes.
voice, but like
Yes.
all those
Yes.
little dots when you start connecting them, that's pretty cool. So
It was.
how does then the tarot deck okay, the next question was about, I have so many questions now, but let's move on with the tarot maybe, because I'm curious. Your deck is very special. Each card is created from like plant ink and from different what is like rust and different metals,
Yeah.
and it's printed on this eco herbage cardstock, which I talked to you just before we pressed live. Like
Yeah.
all these decks of mine that I have on the shelves, I have definitely probably over 300 decks. I never counted. I always, this is my avoidance mechanism. I don't know how many decks I have. But this is one of my favorite papers out of all of my decks. And uh, you mentioned that actually you wanted a paper that's natural. Maybe you can say also about the paper, but also about how you separated your two studios, because that's also
Oh, yeah.
shows, how much care goes into project like this. I love that.
So much care. Yeah, so I have two art studios, or this, my home studio is also, I would say, a spiritual studio as well. And I started working with natural materials because I moved out to the country, to a rural area. And the home in which I moved to at that point really just had one sink that was available to clean out art supplies. And that sink was in the kitchen. And I had been working with oil paints, which are, fairly toxic. And I did not want to wash them in the sink in the same place that I was, my partner and I were eating foods and friends would be eating food. So I quickly started experimenting with natural materials, creating inks from nuts and berries and all sorts of things just to reduce the toxicity in my home. And that process, I'm trying to think, that's probably been going on for about 8 years now. And it's taken me a while to like really figure out what works and what doesn't work. So something I can even show you that's really special about these cards. I'll show you one of the originals. Because I wasn't making it to share with other people. Um, I'll just pick, oh, I was going to talk about this card. Here it comes. So this is like the size that they are
Okay,
naturally.
so they're not that big.
They're not big at all. That there's so many rookie mistakes I made with this deck. So a proper commercial artist, of which I am not, would make the most images for tarot that you see are made much larger, so that the artist has like a full ability to render the image how they want, and then they're reduced for the card. For me, the summons was to make a tarot deck. So I literally made a tarot deck, I made the deck.
Yeah, yeah, you made a deck.
I made a
Thanks,
deck and then I
Carol.
decided to copy it. But all the inks here are, they're all natural inks and they change with time. So they are not light fast. I keep them in a little box, a little carrying case. But even this card, the inks are holding up pretty well. But as time goes on, those colors will get quieter and quieter, and some of them will even turn gray and change. So this is actually a living deck. The inks are changing
A deck of
as
transformation, tarot
they're
of
aging just
transformation,
like me. We're
right?
aging together, which is really beautiful. And so in terms of channeling too, I will tell another quick story. So this card in particular, um, is more proof of the channeling connection because um I've been looking for some guidance around like human guidance, how to navigate this world of spiritual connection. And when I was traveling, I was listening to a symposium of people who worked with empaths. And there was somebody who came on who I was interested in maybe working with, and he said that he was psychic and that he helps people work with those abilities. So I set up a phone consultation with him. And this is the Mentor of Swords, by the
Yeah, I
way.
was just trying to find the card so we can see the, yeah, how it looks
Yeah,
on
so
the,
you can see the colors here. They haven't changed that much. They're a little bit less bright, I would
yeah,
say.
bit more
Um,
purple. Yeah.
and the Mentor of Swords is kind of perfect if you're looking for a guide, but that was not my intention. So I set up a phone call with this person. I returned home from the trip. I was telling my partner about, this meeting I had set up. And I decided to do a tarot spread, a clarity spread, which I love doing very regularly, and about it, like how I could transition home. And this card came up as what I need to know. And and I said, that's so funny. This card looks so much like this person, this guy who works with psychic people. He looks so much like it. And I looked up, I should see if I can find the image. I looked up the image on, I'll just do a quick look. I was like, it looks so much like Sade. This person's name is Sade Griffin. Um, and I looked up the image. Oh, hold on, I'm spelling it wrong. It's worth it, trust me. Wait for this. And I showed my partner, and this is the image on his website.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, what?
The
What?
shirt,
The
like it's,
shirt, the hand. I was like, and I really just sat there for a while going, what the F? What is going on? So I keep having these experiences. Anyway, so these are all natural materials. And so my home studio is just for work with natural materials. So no toxic art things are allowed in this space. And then I have another space where I do oil painting and other things with more commercially made
so
things.
this deck was created in your home studio, then with
That
natural
deck was
materials
created in my home
only.
studio with great
Yeah.
love and attention. And
So
yeah, it just felt like a natural alliance. It was the materials that I was working with when I got this summons. So I just immediately started working with the natural
and
materials.
like, did you decide that you have the, the material on the cards from grass and from plants? Like, did it come later on when you were thinking, oh, I'm going to print it now? Or like, what was the whole process? And just tell us also, because you using like poke berries, like, I don't even know how to fucking structure questions now because I'm like,
Fine.
I want to know everything. So let's maybe start with like natural materials. We know that much. So
Yeah.
you were working before that with those natural materials.
Yeah.
Tell us, like, for people who may be not knowing about this, that like these cards have natural inks from like pokeberries, from all these different fruits and plants and flowers and veggies and so on,
Yeah.
and minerals as well, like rust and stuff. So you were doing the originals for yourself, but like, how did you then kind of like magically, because it's called magical
Yeah.
nature tarot, how did you do any rituals around it? Like, how did you do it all? Like, what's the process?
In terms of making the cards or in terms
Yeah,
of
and like
the
choosing the materials, like, was it just very intuitive, like it was just
very
coming?
intuitive. It was very
Yeah.
intuitive. I would start each morning for the most part drawing and just kind of getting myself warmed up artistically. And then I would head into the studio and I would pull the materials out really instinctively. So I can kind of show you. You can see this big flat file I
Yeah.
have here in my home studio is full of papers from different materials. And in this deck, I would say the most common ways of working with natural inks are doing something called an eco print, and the way I do it is I take natural materials and put them on paper, roll that paper around tin cans, and the tin works as a mordant, and I put them in a dye bath. for about an hour. So you're literally like cooking the plants and cooking until you get these beautiful, beautiful colors and layering.
Textures, yeah.
Textures, absolutely. And then I also do monotype prints where I put the inks on a plastic sheet and let them dry. And then I run that through a press on a dampened paper. So it really captures, yeah, it captures the color and the movement of the inks. Every once in a while, I'll hand paint with them. But more of these materials are from actually printed inks. Yeah.
Yeah, Carol said that so much plant energy and it smells herbal too. I'm like,
Yeah, they have, I don't know, they're just like they're yummy. And so when it came time, these ones, these cards that are like, the original cards are
yeah.
very different. They're stiff, they're like heavier. And another thing is each of them has a different back.
Mm.
So I used like large pieces. Yeah, each one is totally different. But when it came time to copy, so I was sharing some of these images online on Instagram, and friends were like, I want a copy, I want a copy. So I thought, okay, well, I'll make a few copies. That will be fun. Um, and so I found a company called fancily called makeplayingcards.com. And
Yeah.
they had, a way to load on information. And so then I went through that process, and I tried to keep that also somewhat sacred too, of like really like taking time with each card, making sure the image looked good, even though it was
Yeah.
with computers. That was a new process for me. And then choosing the back was really fun. So this image is from a larger print of, this is wild grape and chokeberry, um, which are beautiful, beautiful berries. The wild grape grows naturally like right around where I live. And the chokeberry grows in the White Mountain region in New Hampshire, and this beautiful rocky area. So I also have, how to explain, I have relationships with all of these plants and all of these berries. I know where they come from. I always ask before I take plants. So I have a bit of a ritual around foraging too, as I ground myself. And I really do like talk to the plants in my head, not out loud, but in my head. And I say hello and usually chat about how beautiful they are. And then I'll ask them if I can forage and harvest some of their fruits or leaves, whatever, for an art project. And I usually say, like, I would like to use your beauty and your wisdom for help in artwork that will also help others. And
Mm.
whether sometimes I use them for teaching or for, things like this deck. And they almost always say yes. They almost always are like, oh, yes, that would be great. Every once in a while, when I ask, it will be quiet, or they'll kind of, if there's hesitation, then I won't take any. And usually my experience of when that is and why that is if we're in a season, like for example, wild grapes, we had a season here that was very dry, and the grapes, there just weren't that many.
Mm.
Um, and they were like, no, you know, no, other beings need me more now, right?
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
birds need me and bears need me and these other creatures need me more. So I was like, okay.
I
So when I
totally hear
get a
you.
yes, I will sometimes take a little extra,
Yeah.
if that's okay
Yeah.
with the plants, and freeze them or dry them for
I
later.
totally hear you because I had this a couple of years ago. I had this dream, and it was during the Jupiter and Neptune conjunction. And both of these planets, Neptune is the spiritual, the mystic of the zodiac, and Jupiter is the biggest planet of our solar system. So they both kind of were like very expansive on that dreaminess, spiritual kind of quotes. And I had dream of making flower essences. And it's not that I never, like I didn't know what flower essences are. I knew about it, but it was, I think, 2021 maybe, or like one of those years. I can't remember now, but it was still kind of COVID-ish. And I was in Croatia and I was running around, like, trying to make those flower essences from the dream. And also the same, like I totally hear what you say. Like I talk to the plants because right now, even I walk around and once I freaked out, I kind of go to myself, fuck, I have no friends. I'm just like, most of my friends are in the US, like I Zoom them. I'm kind of, and my friends are like plants and trees and my dog. That's people I talk
Absolutely.
to.
And
So
those are valid friends. Like
true.
they're our relatives,
Yeah,
they're our
definitely.
family. Like we are all earthlings, right?
Yeah.
You're
So
earthling and
yeah,
you're made of the
anyway,
same
so
material.
this
I
is
love that.
definitely This is definitely perfect. And I love that you also ask and, have a connection to the plants, because I think it's so important. It feels differently when somebody does. You might not have known much about tarot archetypes, but I think it's in the end, that's easier to learn that if you just like were unconscious about materials you were using, because I think energetic, that really comes through in the deck. And I handle a lot of decks, and your deck is so gentle. And even, pokeberry, some of the plants are poisonous, right? But like it's just the poison healing, very two sides of the same coin, right? And it's so
Absolutely.
interesting to like just you can feel it in the cards, which is just beautiful.
Yeah. And a lot of the plants in at least where I live that are poisonous because they're doing a job. A lot of times they're protecting woodlands, or they're, poison ivy is trying to keep us from developing so much. So poison can get a bad rap, that it's actually really useful in the world. The
Yeah,
reason.
exactly. And sometimes, the dosage makes a poison. A lot of these plants are also used in medicine, as we know, and so on. But yeah, that's a different subject. Okay, so we know kind of the the process of how you were creating it. But when you, for example, have pokeberry, right? Because a lot of pokeberry here is this beautiful kind of purplish.
That's chokeberry.
Oh, chokeberry. That's what I meant.
Chokeberry,
Yes, I'm
yeah.
saying pokeberry,
That's
but
okay. There's
chokeberry.
chokeberry in the deck too. Yeah.
So when you use this, like, would you just like how would you like crush the berries and then do the tin thingy as well, or how did you do it with the berries?
So with choke, it depends on, what material, but berries for the most part, you can use them just raw. You can just like
Okay.
squish them, but for some of them, they also release more color with heat. So chokeberry, I always I heat and boil, and you mash them while you do it, and it makes this beautiful dark purple, like soupy thing. And then
Yeah.
I strain out the larger materials, but like the card that you just had picked up, put that back up again. Yeah, I don't overstrain the materials because all of that texture is
Mm.
from little bits of the berries that are pressed into the paper. Yeah.
Super cool. I
Yeah,
love that.
it's so beautiful. And that's something that I learned from printmaking. I didn't know that that was possible. A lot of people who work with natural inks just paint with them. But when you print with them, as they go through the press will push those sediments into the paper and create that kind of texture. That's just that
Yeah,
feels
and
magical to me.
this texture just makes it so much like the perspective becomes so much richer, like if it was just like one flat thing.
Right.
And also like your collage work, it's so cool as well.
Thank
Just like to have all these different, and even the image itself feels like it's a little bit like it's lifting out from the background. I think it looks really cool.
Yeah. And in truth, I hadn't done a lot of collage before this deck, like a little bit. But yeah, it just seemed the right thing to do.
Yeah,
Oh,
pentacles in this deck. I love the trees. It's so cool. Okay, and also if we come to court cards, I know that you were
yes.
maybe inspired by Bev. I don't know if she
Yes.
has this on her website or not. I can't remember.
That
But
little
you changed the
tarot. Yeah,
names, right?
I
You
did.
have the seeker for the
Yep.
page. I'm using the cups here because it's so
Yeah.
beautiful. And usually cups, it's my least favorite
Oh,
element. But in
really?
your deck, the court cards, they're my favorites. So you have apprentice. He
Yep.
knows how to take a bath,
Yes, he does.
but he can
He's
still
immersed.
learn.
He's
He can
immersed in his
still
stuff.
learn. Mentor of cups, beautiful. Handling the water. And then ancestor of cups feels like really ancient. And so these images per se, like, did you also have them in your dreams? Like, I know that it's weird to ask artists, like, how do know what to paint? But like, they feel so beautiful. Love the colors. It's
That
just
one
something.
too, that one feels like it's out of a dream. So how to explain? I would say they're almost like daydreams. So they weren't from my nighttime dreams, but I was in this
So
state of collected energy going through them, and would just work until it felt like everything, like I said, was settled. And especially there are times like that card I showed, this one that I showed before, this one that ended up actually being a real person in my life now, which is so wild. I didn't really understand that image when I was making it. I was like, I wasn't sure I liked it. I felt like the shirt was maybe a little too much. Like, I don't know. And the card was just like, no, this is what I need to be. So I was like, okay, I'll just stick with it. And then it ended up being a real person in my life. So all I could say is that, yeah, it wasn't in a trance, but definitely in kind of a dreamlike state while working.
Yeah.
And
And you
those,
changed. Sorry,
yeah,
yeah,
go
go,
ahead.
go.
I was going to talk about, so the names that
Yeah,
I
exactly. Yeah.
and the progression, as I researched tarot and I looked into it, a few things, like I wanted the deck, once I realized I was going to be sharing this deck with more than just me, I wanted it to be available to all different people. Like, I didn't want it to just be all white people. I didn't want it to be just all women. I didn't want it to be all skinny people. I wanted it to be able, and I was really thinking about my friends. Like, I want my friends to feel connected to these cards and to have some card look at them and have some resonance with it, right? So, and I have like a really fun, wonderful group of friends. Um, and
Hi,
so
friend.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And then I also didn't want this like hierarchical thing with like knights and kings and queens and
Yeah.
castles, and it's just not, it is part of my lineage, being from a German lineage. But it's not something that resonates in my life now. And I didn't want that kind of, and I certainly did not want like a king at the top. I was like, no way. So I started thinking about the progression in a different way and thinking about like, well, what if this really is just a thought about like how we grow and how we change and how we accumulate knowledge as we go through time, that there is this real like there's a connection between them. No, they're all different. And also that doesn't have to be linear. Like, some days we're the seeker and some days we're the ancestor. It's not like, oh, we're going to do this progression and then we're done. We move
Totally.
through them all the time. And so the seekers, I felt like all of the pages that I looked at had this similar energy of kind of like newness and curiosity and eagerness to be involved in whatever suit. So it also made sense to me that they were kind of younger. I liked having children in the cards,
Yeah.
that they have this embodiment of like beginner's mind and being excited about things. And then the apprentice is like really still learning and immersing themselves in that suit that they're involved in. They can be a little bit, they're kind of adolescent, right? They can be a little cocky. They can think they know a lot more than they really do. But they're still on this beautiful journey. And then I swapped in terms of like who is the final one. I worked with the king next, which is something that Beth does in Little Red Tarot, which I
Yeah.
really loved. And I felt like those cards had a sense of like being real teachers and leaders in communities, and somebody who I would want as a mentor, or if I'm wanting to mentor, have those same qualities of the ability to teach, to share, to communicate, and to really be in a good sense of skill with whatever it is that they're working with. And then the ancestor cards, I really went out on a limb a little bit with those, because I felt like those cards really are the essence of each of the elements in those suits, so that the ancestor of cups is water. Like,
Mm.
what are all those components of water that we need? Like, they really are an embodiment of that element. And the ancestor of pentacles, and that card actually that you're showing is based on an image of an actual mountain that's in Pakistan, that I think is called like Lady of the Mountain or something, but is this like mountain range that looks like a
Yeah.
woman lying down. um and even talking about it, I'm like calming down.
Yeah. Yeah,
Letting
definitely.
myself
Definitely.
have more of that earth energy. Um, and I feel like the ancestor cards feel like guides to me, that I do readings
Mm.
with them as if they are spirit guides. They
Yeah,
feel quite
definitely. They
powerful.
feel very like kind of ancient, like kind of timeless, like you wouldn't.
Absolutely.
And what I liked about it as well, if somebody wants to use it not as people, because I know they court cards, so often we read them as beings,
Yeah.
but because of the seeker, apprentice, mentor, and ancestor, there is also that kind of maybe linear, but like a process of developing something. And of course, you can mishmash in between it, but yeah, you start something which is like a seed a little bit, and then you know make few mistakes, you learn on the way, and then you master it a little bit more, and then finally it's settled.
And it's settled. And sometimes I'll
Settled.
work with those cards with each other. So I'll take out all the seekers and look at them and ask for guidance from them, and or all of the apprentices or all of the mentors or all of the ancestors, in particular the ancestors. I love doing an ancestor spread. Well, I'll have them all out and I'll choose a card for each of them, and ask them like what, to work in your service and to embody those parts of myself, those elements in myself. What guidance do you have for me now?
I
And
love it.
hard for each of them. And it's always really profound, and yeah,
Mm.
very
Oh,
sweet.
that's actually, you know, for people who are listening or watching, that's a great way to work with the deck as well. Like pull the ancestor cards or any, you know, any cards that you feel resonating with, and then maybe pull a card either from the same deck, or you can use another deck or an oracle deck to
Absolutely.
ask for guidance from this particular being or energy. That's I do it very often, and I think like I love it. It's like having conversations. It also opens you up to like to you know whatever your sense is, to seeing, to hearing, to feeling, into your intuition. So that's a really nice way to work with the cards. Would you use your cards in any type of like magical working, because they so filled with like energies of the plants, and you've made them and created them in this like sacred space and ritual way? Could we, like, if I need, I don't know, yeah, pokeberry or chokeberry or rust, that I want
Yeah.
to like maybe finish eating up the old bits of whatever, would it be possible to, you think, use the card and kind
I
of?
do. I do. And I was just, for everybody's listening, I was talking to Kasha before this, that I'm in this process of, which I don't think I even told you, I'm in a process of channeling a guide for this deck, which would be different from Rebecca's guide. So card by card, taking a card, getting help from my spirit guides and asking them to tell me specifically what their guidance is for that card. And then in doing that, once that's done, I'm in the process of that. That will take a little while. I also I've played with it, to see if it works, but it's so lovely is, I've started also asking the plants why they're involved in this and what healing properties they want to give us in this.
Exactly, because that's, you know, when I received the deck and I was going through the booklet, in some cards I could find some information about like the plant, and in some others not. And I'm thinking, well, I want to know what the, you know, what
I
plants are
know.
used in the death card. Like then I can do the research of maybe I can use this plant or ask this plant for guidance. So I'm really grateful that you actually are doing this, that you are going to be listing at least the most important plants that were, you know, in the majority are on the cards, because
Yes.
I think it will add another level for us users, you know, because for you, you might kind of know intuitively, but for us users to know, oh, okay, here we have this and this and this and this plant, and we can do our own kind of connection to the spirit of the plant and to spirit plant communication and stuff like this. So I think that's really great. I'm waiting for this.
Yes, it'll take a little while. So I'm trying to think
Go
with
on,
the
Jory.
channeling. I know
Finish.
I'm working with the channeling. I think I am, maybe about 20 cards away from finishing
Oh,
that. And
that's
then that will need some editing over the summer, and then I'll work in with the plants. The plants actually are coming really quick and easy. I just talked to a plant and asked like why they've been involved and how they want to help us. And they're just, oh my gosh, they're the sweetest things.
yeah.
What's online now is not channeled information for each card. It's Rebecca's guide's really lovely, and she's a really beautiful connection to the deck. And then in the same way I received a summons for the deck, I received a summons to do the guide, to channel a guide. And really, maybe that's how it should have been from the start, but I didn't have those skills then. I just didn't have the confidence to do
Yeah.
that channeling. And now I do. So now I can do it. Yeah.
Perfect. That actually reminds me of a deck. Just one sec.
Yeah.
Mm. from my magical cupboards. But this Polish artist, she created this deck called Tarot Droga.
Ooh, beautiful.
And she had, she said she's been to hospital, like it was years ago, because this deck was printed, in Poland. She has done it on uh, uh, like ceramic plates, actually, the major arcana. She's done on ceramic plates, and they all are connected. Droga means way or path. So
Mhm.
if you pull the major arcana, they create a circle, and each of
Oh,
them is connected to this, that droga, that pathway, that weaves through all the major arcana and connects them. And how she came to create the deck was exactly kind of, not exactly, but similar story to you, that she had a psychic in this regard telling her, you have to create a tarot deck, which she said, like, I don't know anything
that's so
about tarot.
that's so
And
fun. I love that.
she made the deck as well. And yeah, it's just reminded me of when you were sharing. I wanted to share that too. Okay. Well, do we want to say anything else? Do you guys have
Um,
any questions? If you do, please ask us. Otherwise, um, is the deck is available, right? If people want to
Deck
get
is
it.
available. Yep, we have an Instagram page, Magical Nature Tarot, and
Yeah,
then
I will link
the
all the.
website also is
Yeah,
magicalnaturetarot.com. And even so, the my partnership with Wild Soul River is going to be shifting a bit, but the those things will remain the same.
yeah, the paper will stay the same and so on. And
The
I will
paper
link
will
all
stay
the.
the same.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because we need this paper.
I
We need.
think so. Yeah, and I don't think I ever fully answered your question, but the paper, the choice of the paper was so important to me because I wanted the energy of the plants to come through and I wanted the energy of the spirit guides to come through. So it felt like the plants, the paper had to be as carefully chosen as the plants. And the varnish on them is not plastic, it's a water-based varnish. Most of the inks in the deck are soy-based inks, so it's a very eco-friendly deck, like the most eco-friendly I could find in terms of printers. And I feel like the cards really love that.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And I
It's
think
also really beautiful to shuffle.
our hands love that too, because it just feels so good. It has some, yeah, there's texture to the paper, and
Yeah.
yeah, that kind of finish feels so nice. It kind of feels like it's protected, the image is protected, but it doesn't feel plasticky, or yeah, it just feels so good.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful, beautiful deck. And I'm so happy we caught up, because I was always like thinking, how did you do that? What a cool idea, And I always love, like, if I love something, I want to share. And I don't think we have any questions, unless it's the delay. But if there will be any questions, even people rewatching can ask questions. We can maybe answer them in the comments if there will be something that we haven't spoken about. Um, any last words of wisdom?
Oh, just that.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. When I started with this deck, it really helped me to reconnect with my intuitive self so much and with my magical self. So the idea of magical nature is, the nature that's all around us, but also our own magical natures, our intuitive selves, the part of us that knows magic and understands us. So my hope with this deck is that it also helps anybody who even just holds it to connect with that seed in them, that part of them that really knows, all that you need to know. You really do.
Hmm.
And the world is just supporting you in that.
It just reminded me, so I'm going to be selflessly plugging in as well, but I just put on offer these two new readings, which I called like plant ally reading.
Oh,
And I didn't just want to use, like, oh, I pull poppy for you. And this is like, I just thought like, it's not necessary like how I feel like this should be done. I want to use like an array of decks, and like mostly what the plant, like one plant, but like what they want to actually you to like feel at this moment, what's important, how they step up to maybe support you during this thing. And I think your deck will be definitely one of the decks that I'm going to be using, because it just fits in perfectly in like how I feel about plants as well, and tarot and intuition and strengthening your own kind of creative flow and magic. So thanks so much for creating this deck, Jory. It's really beautiful.
oh, thank you.
Um, as I said, I'm going to link all the information in the description below. I also did a review of your deck it's on my tarot map channel as well. So I will link it below if people want to see. Some people like to see all the cards, some people don't like to see all the cards, but all the cards are shown. So whoever likes to see all can just watch the whole thing. Otherwise, skip the bits and leave yourself some surprise. Thank you so much for coming on. Thanks everyone who's been here. Project Refined Life. Oh my God, what's your name? You have such wonderful channel. I love your channel. The paper is such a huge part of the experience of using this deck, she said as well. So whoever is watching, like, go on and Project Refined Life. They have beautiful videos. I love watching your videos. So, Jory, thank you. Thanks everybody who has stayed with us. Thanks for sharing your love for this deck as well. And for people who are going to be rewatching, enjoy it. We'll see each other on Instagram anyway. I'm going to say goodbye to YouTube now. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks.
Okay. We're leaving YouTube.